We've all heard what Nazi Germany did in plain sight. Death camps, mass graves, human experiments. But what they left behind was worse in some ways. Secret vaults filled with stolen lives, bunkers never spoken of, machines with no clear purpose. The war ended, but the discoveries didn't. And what Allied troops uncovered still leaves questions that history hasn't fully answered. Number 14. The Eagle's Nest. High in the Bavarian Alps, the Allies found a strange contradiction. Luxury at the edge of collapse. The Eagle's Nest was built as a birthday gift to Hitler, an extravagant lodge with panoramic views, marble fireplaces, and a gold-lined elevator burrowed into the mountain. But it was mostly empty. No troops, no resistance, just abandoned wealth. Nazi memorabilia, untouched wine cellars, and hand-picked gifts for a dictator who never truly lived there. For soldiers climbing the mountain, it was disorienting, like arriving at the palace of a fallen king whose war had moved underground, leaving the shell of a dream above the clouds. Number 13. Frankfurt Vaults. In a hidden vault in Frankfurt, U.S. forces uncovered crates filled with looted belongings, rings, earrings, gold watches, baby bracelets, even gold dental fillings. Each item had once belonged to someone sent to the camps. There were no names, no photos, just weight, just silence. These were not museum pieces or treasure. They were stripped from victims during transport or immediately before death. The U.S. Army documented the discovery carefully, photographing the piles. One photo shows hundreds of rings heaped into a metal tray, cold, anonymous. That's what Nazi theft looked like at scale. Entire families reduced to a box of stolen metal. Number 12. The Channel Island Bunkers. When British troops returned to the Channel Islands in 1945, they found coastal cliffs hollowed out into bunkers, tunnels, and artillery nests. Nazi forces had spent years turning these British isles into fortress outposts, using forced labor shipped in from across Europe. Locals had lived next to the digging, but never saw the full scale. Inside, Allied soldiers found sealed rooms, rusted helmets, and medical wards that still smelled of chemicals. Lists of prisoners were left behind, but most of the laborers were gone. The silence was heavy. Some bunks still had boots beside them. No names, just the echo of work that was never meant to be survived. Number 11. Die Glocke. In the forests near the Czech border, Allied investigators found what was left of a sealed underground chamber. The walls were scorched. Steel mounts had been torn out. Nearby, witnesses whispered about a Nazi experiment known as Die Glocke, the bell. They described a bell-shaped device that spun violently, emitted radiation, and caused plants to rot and animals to die. Multiple scientists reportedly perished during testing. No confirmed blueprints remain. But some facilities connected to the project, like the Wenceslas mine, were real and heavily fortified. The fear surrounding Die Glocke wasn't in what it did. It was in how hard the Nazis worked to erase it afterward. Imagine what would have happened if the experiment had been successful. Number 10. U-864 Submarine. The German submarine, U-864, was on a secret mission in 1945, carrying aircraft parts and 67 tons of mercury to Japan. Before it reached its destination, it was sunk off the coast of Norway. It stayed hidden until 2003, when divers discovered it split in two, its mercury cargo leaking into the sea. The contamination posed such a risk that Norwegian authorities didn't recover the wreck. They buried it under layers of sand and rock instead. Today, it still sits beneath the surface, slowly releasing poison. A Nazi weapons shipment meant to fuel more war turned into one of the longest-lasting environmental threats of World War II. Number 9. The Nazi Gold Train. In Poland's Wałbrzych region, stories have circulated for decades. A Nazi armored train filled with gold and art was hidden in underground tunnels as the Reich collapsed. In 2015, radar scans picked up something beneath a hillside. Excavations began. Nothing was found, but traces of sealed shafts, incomplete rail lines, and reinforced doors deepen the mystery. Local accounts include sightings of convoys, forced laborers, and armed guards near the site. No evidence confirms the train, yet the obsession continues. Not because of what it represents, a regime so desperate in its final days, it buried its secrets and never looked back, but because of what might be inside. When it comes to greed and capturing what was someone else's, all the powers were more or less like Nazis. Number 8. Peenemünde. When Allied forces reached Peenemünde, they walked into the remnants of the world's first missile lab. This is where Germany's V-1 flying bomb and V-2 rocket were developed, technologies that would later shape space exploration. But in 1944, they were aimed at civilians. London, Antwerp, and Paris were struck by these weapons. Inside the facility, bomb damage revealed labs, test scaffolds, and scattered equipment. American and Soviet teams seized designs and arrested engineers. Wernher von Braun, who worked here, would later lead NASA's Apollo program. The most disturbing part? The same minds behind the moon landings started by building tools of terror. Number 7. Altaussee salt mine. Inside a salt mine beneath the Austrian Alps, Allied troops uncovered one of the most extraordinary art stashes in history. Over 6,000 works were hidden there, stolen from Jewish collectors, galleries, and museums across Europe. Among them were Vermeer's The Astronomer, Michelangelo's sculptures, and panels of the Ghent altarpiece. The Nazis had even wired the mine with explosives, planning to destroy it if defeat seemed inevitable. Local miners quietly defused the charges before fleeing. The mine's temperature preserved the art, but also froze a moment in history when beauty was nearly erased forever, and a war against people included a war against culture itself. Number 6. Harz mountain tunnels. To avoid Allied bombings, the Nazis carved entire weapons factories into the Harz Mountains. When U.S. forces arrived in 1945, they found miles of tunnels filled with machinery, incomplete weapons, and thick air still heavy with oil and dust. But the most haunting discovery wasn't the equipment. It was what wasn't there. Tens of thousands of prisoners had been forced to build and work in these tunnels. Most had died. There were no beds, no windows. Some tunnels still had blood-stained tools and uniforms left behind. The war may have ended above ground, but inside these hills it was clear. Human life had been spent like scrap metal. And do you know what's more horrific? Following the footprints of Nazis, some Hitlers are still doing this in the cobalt mines of Africa. Number 5. The Amber Room. Originally a gift to Tsar Peter the Great, the Amber Room was once called the eighth wonder of the world, a glowing chamber made of amber panels, gold leaf, and mirrors. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, they dismantled the room and moved it to Königsberg Castle. And then, it vanished. To this day, no one knows precisely what happened. Some say it was destroyed in Allied bombings. Others believe it was sealed in a mine or sunk aboard a fleeing ship. Every few years, someone claims to find it, and almost always, something goes wrong. Fires, deaths, disappearances. A full-scale replica of this architectural and interior designing marvel was completed in 2003. It is on display at the Tsarskoye Selo State Museum Reserve outside St. Petersburg, Russia. The Amber Room is no longer just a lost treasure. It's a warning that not everything taken in war ever returns. Is this room the reason why the world is restless and sitting at the end of a major war outbreak? Number 4. Operation Bernhard. At Sachsenhausen concentration camp, inside a sealed workshop, the Allies uncovered a quiet war effort few had heard about. Operation Bernhard was Nazi Germany's plan to destabilize Britain by flooding its economy with counterfeit currency. Skilled prisoners were forced to create nearly indistinguishable British pound notes, millions of them. Some entered circulation. Others were found packed in crates, buried, or burned as the Reich collapsed. The printing plates were real. The banknotes were precise. The goal was economic collapse. The method: enslaved artisans, printing money as weapons while surrounded by death. Some of these notes still exist, perfect forgeries that outlived the war itself. Number 3. The Riese Complex. In the Owl Mountains of Poland, Allied teams found something enormous, a multi-level tunnel complex carved into solid rock. It was called Project Riese, meaning giant. Its purpose? Still debated. Some believe it was meant as a new Führer headquarters. Others think it was a weapons lab. What's confirmed is how it was built, by concentration camp prisoners working in freezing tunnels with little food and constant beatings. Many died where they stood. The site was never finished, but even incomplete, it's massive, has rail lines, ventilation, and even reinforced doors. Today, much of it remains sealed, not because it's unsafe, but because no one is sure what's still down there. Number 2. The Merkers salt mine. In April 1945, U.S. soldiers entered the Merkers salt mine and found what looked like the bottom of the Nazi war chest. Over 100 tons of gold bars, sacks of foreign currency, crates of artwork, and boxes labeled only by number. Many contained the personal belongings of Holocaust victims. The ceilings dripped with salt, the floors were cold concrete, and stacked in the corners were the riches of a continent looted piece by piece. Eisenhower toured the site. Photos were taken. The images became proof at Nuremberg. This wasn't just treasure, it was evidence. A final accounting of a regime built on theft, sealed in stone. Number 1. The Führerbunker. Beneath Berlin, in a bunker buried deep under the Reich Chancellery, Hitler spent his final days. When Soviet troops reached it in May 1945, they found scorched rooms, bloodstains, half-burned documents, and a smell that never left. It wasn't elaborate. Just concrete rooms, sealed doors, and desperation. Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide. Their bodies burned just outside the entrance. Nearby, officers argued over escape routes that no longer mattered. The Soviets later covered the bunker in rubble and denied its location for decades. Today, there's nothing left but a parking lot and a plaque. But beneath it lies the last place Nazi power existed. Cold, silent, and buried like a secret the world wanted to forget. These discoveries didn't explain the war. They remind us why it must never happen again. But some states, drunk on power and addicted to cruelty, seem to have forgotten that even the Nazi regime collapsed. They must remember, an empire built on the blood and bones of the innocent doesn't last. It's always destined to fall.